You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday. Discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows. Only on the Anthony James YouTube channel. Hi everyone, welcome back to our Star Trek Discovery discussion and review. I'm here with Emmett. Well, Emmett, how are you?
Yeah, surviving in these interesting times that we live in.
Very interesting times. Christmas is around the corner, so it's going to be even more interesting.
How does this year both feel like it's gone in a flash and feel like it's been 10 years long as well? How is that possible?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe this year is, you know, that feeling you get at around like 4 p.m. on a Sunday, and you just like really don't want to go to work the next day, but you know,
yes.
this is just like that feeling of lethargy for the whole year.
Yeah. The lethargy year, the limbo year of 2020.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. Well, anyway, we've got a great episode of Star Trek to talk about here. I am interested to hear your take on a lot of stuff here, because as you can imagine, there was a whole load of stuff in this episode that was lore building, but maybe, that's what I was wondering, is it lore building, or is it referring to a lot of lore from the past? And that's what I want to hear your opinion on.
I do think it is building upon pre-established lore in the sense of, so boiling it right down to the episode's title, Unification 3.
Yes.
It's essentially making it a third part of a TNG two-parter, with Spock, working on trying to unify like Romulus, the Romulan people. And, this is sort of making it like a third extended part of that story in the new future that we find ourselves in. So I think it is definitely building upon pre-established lore in this new post-Federation world, Yeah,
so that's something that I was going to actually ask you about the name. So that means that Unification 1 and Unification 2 previously, they were Next Generation?
Yeah, they were Next Generation. So the early in the episode, we watch a clip of it from the logs of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. That, I believe that clip is directly from either Unification Part 1 or Part 2. I didn't have a chance to rewatch the episodes before this, but again, they are 100% referencing it in this episode because it's so integral. The reunification of Vulcan and Romulus together for this story, because taking these people who had separated, over like millennia ago, and have developed into wildly different cultures, and then trying to put them together, and the difficulties that sort of arose from that,
Yeah, and I think as we go through the season, and you're here to talk me through it, I'm coming to realize that there's a lot that I didn't know, but at the same time makes complete sense. So the Romulans and the Vulcans originally were one people.
Yeah, well, again, it was like eventually revealed that yes. So, what was the name of the Surak? Yeah. So there's basically. So you know how the Vulcans, little history lesson for everyone who's not maybe.
Oh, I'm loving it.
So the Vulcans are always portrayed as a very logical, very emotionless people.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case within their history, and the Vulcans actually are capable of feeling very strong, very powerful emotions. So much so that it really held back their society because they were in a state of constant warfare. Because of it, they were driven so much. And then there was a character in history named Surak who came in and brought in these tenets of logic and like basically a new school of thought within Vulcan, which completely shifted their society and led them down to become the Vulcans that we know and love. The Romulans were basically like, nope, we don't want a part of this, and left the planet and sort of their own sort of society. And that's where the fracture point comes between the Vulcans and the Romulans, at least, again, to the best of my memory,
Okay, so that's really interesting. So am I right in then assuming, is there any physical difference between a Romulan and a Vulcan at this point?
So they're...
something to do with a forehead?
Yeah, there's a slight physical differences. They're species-wise, they're now referred to as cousin species, where they're like they've branched off slightly, but the differences are not necessarily so massive that they can't be undone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
It's not like comparing like an Andorian to a human. They come from the same. It's again, not to use a terrible analogy, but it's like a branch of a tree where like they begin in the same place and then they sort of split off into two different locations.
Yeah.
But the branches still remain physically tied to that original sort of foundation. You
Yeah,
know?
that's fair enough. And yeah, whereas obviously like something like the Kelpians, they're on in a completely different orchard than this tree.
Exactly, exactly. They're a whole different tree in a different orchard.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Yeah. Right. Okay. So before we get, well, I'm sure we'll get into even more of that lore stuff once we get to all the different things that are going on with the Vulcans in this episode. But before we do that, I just want to say I was right.
Yeah, you called it. I was surprised by this. I'll let you say it. Because
Tilly is going to be the first officer. Now, before we go in, I was surprised by this too, to be honest with you, because I said it as a joke.
Yeah,
Now, I just want people to know, right? We need to say this, right? We need to say this. I want people to know that whenever we've been told in the comments, or whenever, even like, in my personal life, I've been told something about this show where I sort of defend the show. This one, just to show how fair we are, or fair I am, I didn't like this.
yeah.
I didn't
I'll
like this.
admit. So I'm trying to be again fair and balanced
Yeah.
on this front.
Yeah.
I understand what they're doing. They want to give Tilly more to do. They want to take a character who's not necessarily comfortable in that sort of position, throw them in there. I understand from like a character slash story perspective why they would want to do this. It it would not have been my choice for who to put in the first officer. Not to say that I don't like Tilly, but it is a bit weird to have an ensign in that role. She's not even going to get promoted for
Yeah, like she said, it's
acting.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's like
it's actually not. What did she say? It's not my role. It's what was the way she put it? She put it like,
And it's like I can't remember exactly, but she is like
she's
at
keeping her rank. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a role. It's not a rank. That's what she said.
yeah. It's just a role, not right. But like surely for taking on such extra responsibilities and all the stuff that they've already been through, she could maybe be promoted to like junior lieutenant or something like that, the next rank up.
Yeah.
To as a sign. Like I understand that obviously being given this position as acting first officer is a big show of trust, but I feel like with that show of trust, you should probably also maybe give her a promotion. I
Yeah.
feel like you could do that.
I think as well, like I didn't like it, and I feel like it spoke to me of. Now I don't believe that this is true for every part of Star Trek Discovery, so I know people are going to say like this is proof of all those other points about the writing being right, but this particular thing felt to me like they just wanted this to happen for like the emotional aspect of the show, or even just the fact to have that character with her levity, I suppose, in that role, and they want to go in that direction. But I just felt like they even knew it wasn't going to make much sense, because the amount of explanation they were doing within the show themselves, like her being like, I'm just an ensign, and like even she was arguing against it. It made me think like the writers were like, right, we have to have something in here to show that it isn't normal, because otherwise
we have to spend a whole episode justifying this choice, and I'm like, that's maybe not what you should be spending that episode for.
Yeah.
It felt a bit weird. Now again, like as I said our last discussion, Hugh would have been my choice for he's not even in this episode, weirdly.
Not
at all. Yeah, like, which is weird. Not even in that little group shot where they had everyone together at the end being like, say yes.
Must have been a proper like scheduling thing.
Yeah, like I don't know, but like he would have been my choice. If not him, Paul, or not him, Jet. Again, like there was a lot of people. Like it was like at the end of the episode, not to jump too far ahead. I don't know how much we'll talk about this plot point afterwards, but like they basically assembled all of the people technically more qualified than Tilly in one room to be like, say yes to the acting first officer thing. And all I could think of the whole episode is like, all of these people probably maybe deserve a chance to do that. Not that I dislike Tilly, I really like Tilly, and we've seen in the Mirror Universe, her Mirror Universe counterpart being like a leader and stuff. She's entirely capable of doing this stuff, but it's also just, it's one of those things that rubs a little bit wrong, because I'm like, again, she is an ensign. There is a chain of command for a reason. Starfleet is like a sort of naval-esque organization with ranks and stuff that are sort of important to the structure of how a ship works and stuff like that. So
I thought
because it's like she'll have the duties of a first officer, where she'll have to order people around and do stuff, but then I suppose she'll still have her duties as an ensign, where then she'll be ordered around and stuff. It feels like if there's a situation where Saru is incapacitated, and Tilly has to step up to command, that there could be, some issues of people being like, well, do we listen to Tilly right now?
Yeah.
Because like 2 minutes ago I was ordering her around, and like I feel like it could really mix signals a little bit and maybe cause a bit of an issue if a threat arose.
Yeah, like I feel the same way. And again, it's not that I don't like Tilly. I think Tilly, for me, it's one of those instances where her character served a particular purpose on the show for me.
I think she still serves that purpose of
Yeah,
because in Star Trek in general, there was a joke about in Voyager. There's a character called Harry Kim who's the whole 7 seasons of Voyager. He remains an ensign because the writers were like, we need an ensign, and like we can't promote you. And it's like, so he spends 7 years on their journey as an ensign, never getting promoted, never getting like raised through the ranks. So like I understand that there's the perspective of you need like that sort of young and naive character to sort of contrast with the more senior officers, but it does feel weird to throw her into like a big position of power suddenly.
yeah. Like, and even her like personality, and even like what they're doing with the character, it's almost like she's not fully, but a little bit of comic relief in the show. You know what I mean? Like, I think there is heart to the character. Of course there is, and there is, but
I feel
it
she
does
is
feel
the
that way.
emotional heart. Yeah, I feel she is the emotional heart of the crew.
Yeah.
But like she's still very young and inexperienced, and like it took her a whole day and everyone's support for her to like be like, oh, okay, I'll take the first officer position. You kind of need someone who can, especially in these times, you need someone who can be ready to be in that position from get go,
Yeah.
not someone who is going to need a whole lot of training. I'm not saying that Tilly, you could make her maybe like a second officer, because
Mhm.
the second officer is a position, still a position of authority, still a way of training Tilly up. I
Yeah.
feel like there was other ways to sort of do what they wanted to do with Tilly without necessarily just putting her in the acting first officer role.
Yeah, I saw it coming because them walking out to the saloon in the second episode together. Like, I don't know, I just saw it coming.
Yep.
Yeah, but okay, so we'll stay on Tilly for a second actually, because there was a scene at the very beginning between her and Michael Burnham, where now I don't want this to be a hating on Tilly episode, but at the same time, I didn't really buy that, like, her annoyance at Michael for not telling her. Not telling, like, when Michael didn't tell her that she was going to the slave planet with the emerald chain.
Yeah.
And then Saru came and questioned her about it, and then eventually they found out where she was. To be honest with you, like, I know they're friends and they do share a room together, like they're roommates. I know that, but she's an ensign. Michael Burnham was the first officer. I don't really understand why
Yeah.
Tilly felt that Michael had to tell her.
I feel like it was a weird sort of moment, but I think it was supposed to serve two sort of structural points of the story. One sort of setting up Tilly to potentially be offered the first officer position
Yeah,
by
because
showing that like she's
she can
calling out Michael and stuff.
stand up to her friends. Yeah,
Stand up, and also to continually highlight the point of Michael Burnham's alienation from the crew to a certain extent, which is Tilly, who's usually been her biggest supporter, now being a little bit more critical of her, and
yeah,
Michael's already. So I feel like it didn't feel the most natural, but it served a structural sort of feature within the story. Not necessarily handled the best, could have been handled better. But yeah, no, it was definitely this was a weird episode for Tilly in general, I feel, as a character. I don't want to say it was a bad episode for Tilly. I just want to see where maybe the rest of the season goes with this. But it could be an awkward plot point to sort of work with. Yeah.
But once, like, we might just view this little transition phase as awkward, and then once she's in the role, she'll come into her own, and it'll make sense then. But at the time, like, we don't know how they're like the stories they're going to tell in the future. Maybe it would serve to have a character like her there. But at the minute, the little transition from the ensign it does seem strange. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, next I want to talk about the involvement, Michael Burnham being used as like bait for diplomacy with the Vulcans. So they use Michael because obviously Michael Burnham, love it or hate it, she is Spock's stepsister. So, well, I suppose not stepsister. I suppose actually just adopted sister. So
yeah, adopted sister. Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes, and the president of the Vulcan and Romulans come, or we should say, was it Nivar?
Well, Nivar was
Nivar
Nivar
is the name of the planet. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the president of Nivar comes and comes in and basically says, "You know that data you want? You're not having it." Yeah, and that was sort of just like the end of the episode. Credits should have rolled then, but
yeah, it's immediately credits roll. You know, we spend the rest of the episode with Tilly, hemming and hawing about taking the first officer position.
yeah,
No, like they at least do something to explain why the Vulcans. So like when Michael speaks to Admiral Vance about the Vulcans, she's surprised to hear that the Vulcans have broken away from the Federation because they were one of the four founders.
Mhm.
Bit of a weird thing for her to say because we've seen that the Andorians have broken away and they were one of the four founders, and we have not heard of the Tellarites at all, who were another founder race of the Federation. So like the only founder race we've seen in the Federation at this stage is the humans, like humanity.
but
So,
but the planet has broken away.
Yeah, the planet has broken
but the
away
races,
as a whole.
yeah.
So like her being surprised on that front, but and we, you know, her not understanding what happened, but we learn that the reason that we learn a bit more about the history leading up to the burn, how there was a crisis of dilithium crystals and
SB19.
Yeah, they were working on a project called SB19, and the Vulcans / the Nivar are convinced that they were responsible for the burn. Which is why they sort of have pulled themselves out of the Federation and become, like many of the planets we've seen, a little bit more isolationist.
Yeah, it's really it's really interesting.
Ironically, you know, Michael suspects the Romulans having turned them isolationist, but Vance points out it was actually the Romulans wanted to remain within the Federation. The Vulcans are the ones that went isolationist.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and we saw a bit of the dynamic between the Romulans and the Vulcans later on as well, in the Tikal in Ket. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. But before we do, I just want to mention this SB19. So my understanding was that the SB19 project was basically they were trying to create like a portal or gate which could take you across the universe really quickly. That's what it basically was.
Yeah, basically opening. We've seen in Star Trek stable wormholes before, but like I don't know if we've seen many man-made ones in the past. So you know, we've had like in Deep Space Nine, there was the Bajoran wormhole that was a sort of an integral part of it, and then like in Voyager, there was a portal that sort of threw them to the like far end of the Delta Quadrant and such like that. So we have seen these. So I understand they're trying to connect areas of space to put ease on the sort of the dilithium storage or reserves rather.
Yeah,
so
that made sense to me. Yeah
because we want to be able to make that travel a little bit easier on them.
Yeah, and also like it makes sense that if a massive problem goes off there, like that experiment could maybe cause that huge fallout. So, but obviously, I think that that's going to end up being not that. And in fact, there's some evidence to prove that. So, Michael Burnham eventually, because they were denied, declares Tikal in Ket in a very parlay from Pirates of the Caribbean way.
Oh yes, no, that is a good point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, it was very parlay. And basically, she has to go in front of a jury. I don't know what you'd call them, like a
committee.
A committee, yeah. And she has to be fully truthful with them and just give the science, and then they'll decide whether or not to agree to give her the data or not. And on the there's a Romulan, there's a Vulcan, and then there's I don't know if she's Romulan or a Vulcan, but she operates within the two communities.
I think she is like a half Vulcan, half Romulan. I think they maybe said that at some point. Or at least if she's not biologically speaking, she's culturally part Romulan, part Vulcan.
Yeah, and we also had the surprise that Michael Burnham's mother is about, and she is
the advocate or whatever they
the Kuwat Milat. That's the sect of these women that she's a member of, and she has to tell the truth, or she has to seek the truth, or so. First
absolute
of all,
candor.
Yeah, what about Michael Burnham's mom being back in the show?
So yeah, this is an episode of very weird emotions, if you get me, because we have Michael reuniting with her mom in this very stressful situation. I understand why, from a storyline perspective, her mom was on Vulcan, because again, it's supposed to sort of highlight that clashing of her two identities and stuff like that a little bit more.
Yeah.
It is a sort of weird situation of, but why did you end up here? Like, how did you end up here exactly? They sort of briefly touch upon it, but it does feel a bit, odd that she had just been hanging out here in this religious order,
Yeah, and she like I know that wasn't her mom the original user of the suit?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, the angel suit.
So do you not like?
Surely she has other stuff she should be doing rather than just hanging out with a religious order on
Yeah,
Nivar. Like, don't you have like, wouldn't you have been searching for your daughter? Maybe, like, I don't know.
yeah. Like, shouldn't her shouldn't Michael have been way more surprised to see her?
Yeah, it
Like, she
was like,
went
yeah,
forward 900 years, and her mom is there.
yeah. Well, like, they knew that her mum was somewhere, and like Michael was also looking for her. But like, it is one of those weird situations of like, Michael lost her parents when she was quite young,
Yeah.
so she did grow up. So it is one of those weird situations of like, yes, this is her mum, but technically they don't maybe know each other particularly well.
Yeah,
And
and that was alluded to in the episode too, because
yeah,
Gabrielle actually said, "Is this what you were like when you were 12?" Because she didn't
yeah,
actually know her. Yeah,
yeah. It's like, I think it was maybe like a very sort of, maybe realistic is the wrong term, but like a very interesting take on the thing of like, they don't just immediately fall into, perfect mother-daughter relationship. They have a complex relationship in the sense of like, they both want to get to know each other better, but they have other responsibilities, and because maybe they don't have that immediate connection anymore, they put their responsibilities before that relationship.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense to me. I also think that it's interesting. It's interesting the way that Gabrielle takes upon her duties so harshly. Well, I would say so correctly with Michael in this episode, and there was a load of really great lines and great dialogue between the two while they're standing in front of the committee
Yeah,
and just going back and forth at each other. I don't know why. There's like whenever TV shows do like this trial thing,
yeah.
I like these episodes of shows, where it's like,
For
no, we're gonna stand in front of people and we're gonna explain our reasons for half an hour. I like that.
I enjoy one of my favorite films of all time is 12 Angry Men, which is just a courtroom drama of the jury discussing the case and all that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
almost entirely shot within the jury room, and I very much love it as a piece of cinema. So I'm on the same boat of, I like trial scenes, I like those sort of discussions, and like, this was on some level Michael's trial to get the data, but also Michael's trial to if she was going to remain within the Federation, because that was hammered home a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
I think for like maybe like the third or fourth episode in the row where it's been like, Michael doesn't know where she's going, and we do get resolution to a lot of those questions. Whether that sticks for the rest of the season, we'll have to wait till to see. But
It has been a bit of a yo-yo, hasn't it? But I think
it hasn't.
it felt like this episode. Actually, she's now in a relationship with Book, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So she's found that as well. So the temptation to leave the Federation was as large as it ever was probably going to be. She's in a different time. She has a new fella, and she's like, you know what? This isn't for me. But then she realizes, actually, the Federation is what you make it to be, and I do fight for the Federation. And she's realized at the end of the episode, I'm going to stay. So it's interesting because now I do think Book is going to eventually be in this crew. I think he's going to. Yeah.
Well, like we said last episode, I was very much of the opinion of where Michael goes, I think Book will follow. I think
Yeah.
he's pretty head over heels with her, and she seems pretty set on staying now. This whole episode in general had like a lot of themes of like joining, unification, and family. Like, from like Michael's perspective, she's following on the work of Spock. Her mother was there. She eventually decides that the Discovery is her family, and she's going to remain with them. And then there's also obviously the family dynamic, or like the unification dynamic with the Romulans and the Vulcans, in the sense of like, there are tensions, but they are trying to work together. And now unification is partly about Vulcan and Romulus, but it's also about Nivar, the new planet, and the Federation maybe once again. Not just yet, but maybe in the future. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. And also, like Book said, like you feel like home. So yeah, he is, as you say, he's gonna stay.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna, he should have been first officer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So
Imagine that. Imagine
yeah,
that. Hello, man. I've met 3 times.
yeah, yeah,
There you go.
yeah. But his reference is Michael Burnham.
Yeah.
You come highly recommended from our previously demoted. Yeah.
First officer.
But yeah, so you said before we started recording that you had a few things to say about Nivar.
So yeah, no, the history here has been quite interesting. So I was basically in like with a lot of things, you often want to like look in to see if there's any particular meaning. So I was like, I looked into Nivar a little bit, and apparently it comes from a bit of Trek lore slash fandom, where it's name the name for the planet comes from a Vulcan art form,
Mm-hmm.
that it means to form. And it was like basically examining something from two different viewpoints, or being examined from
Oh,
two different
two as in
viewpoints.
TWO.
Yeah,
Two form.
TWO. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, a two form art. So
Ah,
again, I think it's supposed to be reflective of the fact that they're taking the perspective of the Vulcan and the Romulan
yeah.
and mixing it together. So it is now a two form society, and that's where Nivar comes from. So I quite
Mm,
like that. I quite like that as a
that's
title for the
cool. Yeah.
planet. And
Yeah.
I do feel like the where we see Nivar at the moment makes sense to a certain extent, because we've seen obviously in those unification episodes that Spock was working to reunite the people, and then we've seen in the J.J. Abrams films.
Mm-hmm.
Not to quote them because I know they're quite divisive in the canon, but what we do know of their influence on the main timeline, Romulus, the planet, was destroyed in the first Star Trek film, which is what led Spock of the main universe into the Kelvin timeline. But obviously, Romulus was destroyed. That really damages the strength of the Romulan people. So they would obviously have to find somewhere else to move. And if they were in the process of reunifying with Vulcan or uniting with Vulcan on a cultural level, it would make sense for the survivors of the planet to eventually migrate to Vulcan
Yeah.
and live on the planet together. So I think it makes sense from a geopolitical or galactic political standpoint for
Mm-hmm.
why they're all living on Vulcan now, and why the name of the planet has changed in response to that. So I find
Yeah.
it very.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I like it is interesting that they changed the planet. It shows me that the Vulcans eventually, through Spock's starting it and stuff, they eventually did fully meld into one. However, in this episode, we saw potential, for schisms happening within that community. Uh,
Yeah. Well, again, this is still, because again it's referred to as Unification 3. I feel like the unity between the Vulcans and the Romulans is not perfect yet. We
yeah.
see it with the three council members, where we have the purely logical Vulcan, the Romulan who has a little bit more strongly worded emotional opinions, and then the culturally the midway point, the halfway point, and they're not quite able to reach consensus
Yeah.
in this sort of contentious issue, and they make some references to civil unrest in other locations. It's not a perfect thing, because again, they have been separated for like 2 millennia,
Mm-hmm.
and they've only been unified for less than a millennia. So like it's an imperfect process that they're still working through there. And with Vulcans being able to live for quite a while, I can't remember exactly how long, but like there's probably still some old grudges that sort of remain there,
Oh yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
still sort of
Yeah. But
it's like what we see in a lot of the real world. When two societies have to sort of coexist with each other, there are natural frictions that exist, especially if there's been conflict between the two. You know.
we wouldn't know anything about that in this country, would we?
Yeah. Oh God, no, not in Northern Ireland.
No,
Not in Northern.
no, no. Just purely.
I bet you now I'm going to get someone correcting me, being like, "Do you mean the north of Ireland?"
Yeah.
in the comments.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. So basically, yeah, I really loved actually that schism becoming a thing, and it already existed, but rearing its head here. And the Romulan basically said, "Well, we will give the data," because they believed in what Michael Burnham was saying. I loved that Michael Burnham. I don't know. Like sometimes, it was everything I was thinking about this episode. With Tilly becoming the first officer, I was questioning that, and then her mom randomly appearing, that I was questioning that, and then it still got me by the end, because I was like, you know what? That moment where she just says, "I don't want the data," and she bangs the gong, and she just says, "I don't want it." it's not worth sacrificing the peace of your people. I just was like, all right, Star Trek, you got me.
They did bring the episode together, I think, a little bit with the classic Trek speech. Like so many episodes of Trek end with the captain or the main character giving a sort of impassioned speech that sort of wins the day to a certain extent. It didn't win over the scientific community, but it won over the president, and she had the authority to give the data herself. And I think that's sort of integral to the spirit of Star Trek, where, a lot of conflict can be solved with proper political conversations and being willing to trust each other, So I think it made that speech did pull it together a bit more at the end for me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like I agree. So overall, I thought this was a what's a kind way to say it? I thought it was a messy episode.
Peaks and troughs.
Peaks and troughs. Definitely had some of the coolest, like not some of the coolest, but it's had some of the nicest moments of the season at the end, maybe there. But it definitely also had some of the weirdest, questionable parts of the season.
Yeah, it felt a little clunky at times from a writing standpoint, at least from my mind, in the sense of, like, we talked about it with Tilly. We won't go back into that. Yeah. But, there was, even the stuff with Michael and her mum, there was just a lot of stuff that I feel could have been handled a little bit better. Maybe if they had been able to make this part, this story a two-parter, maybe, be able to give a lot of the stuff that was going on time to breathe, maybe a unification 3-4 instead of just a unification 3. But hindsight is 2020, obviously. But
yeah, but no, it was great. It's Star Trek, but by the end of it, you just enjoy being in the world for a certain extent. It's
like the stuff I loved in this episode was with Neelar and learning a little bit about, because I've been talking about it the whole season. I've been like, where's Vulcan?
Yeah.
I want to know what's going on with Vulcan. I want to know what's going on. I just, so I was happy to see it, and I'm curious about their development in the new timeline that we're in. So
yeah, I'm really enjoying it as well, because it's like what they're doing this season is what all the fans would want them to do. It's like, okay, we're 900 years in the future. Let's go, and each episode we'll go and visit a different society and show you what they're up to now. So I think it was the obvious thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
But it's one of those things of like, the show is called Star Trek Discovery, and that's what they've been working on. It's a journey of discovery for the whole crew, and they are on a journey, and that is what Star Trek is sort of about, exploring the unknown. Mm-hmm. This is completely unknown to them, and they're having to piece it all together,
Yeah, it's great episode of Star Trek at the end. But okay, so thanks very much for watching, guys. I think we'll be back next week for episode 8, I think it is, next week. We're over halfway through now, which is great. And what we're going to be doing as well soon is starting our Expanse coverage. And we've been talking, Emmett has been blasting through. So I think he's got 2 seasons to go to catch up. But one word review of what you've seen so far?
Ooh, adaptive. Let's say that.
Oh, lovely.
Adaptive. The show is always finding new ways to adapt, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm sure you'll hear Emmett and I talk about The Expanse a lot more in the future, as well as Conrad from the After Dark podcast. He's also currently blowing through it. So hopefully we'll all sort of have a convening of the minds. We'll have a Takal Inket about the Expanse. Yeah. All right.
I like that.
All right, Emmett. Well, have a good week, and I'll see you next week. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Bye-bye. You're watching Sci-Fi Saturday. Discussion and analysis of all your favorite sci-fi TV shows. Only on the Anthony James YouTube channel.